I've kind of been thinking about how I could look at this from a rugby point of view, and I don't really want to talk about our rugby result on the weekend, but, it's kind of like, and the game of two halves, last year, we had team A being, the team of 5 million and on one side, and you've got COVID on the other side, and the government being the referee. And I think that, last year, the team of 5 million, we were crushing COVID, and, we were pushing them into their 22, if you like. Everything was looking really good. The world was watching, the world standing in the grandstands and watching in and applauding us. We're doing a great job, and the ref was doing a great job too, right? The ref being the government. Switch to this year being the second half, and the refs changed the rules, to make it easier. And actually what they've done is they the world has now left the stadium. They've decided that, look, we've got better things to do. And we now are playing this game that just keeps going on and on and on and on and on, with the ref constantly changing the rules. We're in this kind of purgatory now, is that we don't have any kind of, when is this going to finish? And actually, should we actually just draw a line in the sand and come up with a new approach, and a different strategy? COVID came along with Team Delta, so they even changed. They brought on a new team onto the pitch, which we didn't know how to deal with. We're still using the same team. We've got a government that keeps changing the rules. And really what we should be doing is just saying, look, it's now time to finish this game. We need a new game plan. And how do we actually beat this thing? Or at least accept that it is here and that we're not going to get rid of it, but what's the best way through this thing? And to make sure that businesses are able to transact again in the safest possible way, side by side with the general public,
And not only that, the bit you missed out, Adam, is that someone's moving all the goalposts all the time.
Well, that's the ref, that's the government. The government is changing everything. I mean, I'm just looking at the figures today, and, at the moment, we've got 0.5% of people that we've had at the border currently. It's just 0.5% of our total active cases. Now, since we had COVID, in 2 years, so rather than, it's 0.5% at the moment, it's been 0.7% across the last 2 years. Of all known cases have been border cases. So it's a crazy scenario.
Say that again, Adam. So just to go back a little bit, the number of COVID cases at the border, or in MIQs, is that what you call them?
We've got 400 people roughly that have COVID in MIQ at the moment. So, MIQ is now kind of this holding pattern that it's been used for people with COVID and without COVID before they get kind of let loose into the community. But we have 4,500 people with COVID already in the community. And the people that we're trying to get home, particularly for Christmas, the Kiwis, which would logically be the first group of people that should be allowed to come home. Most of these people are fully vaccinated and are very happy to get negative tested. So they present such a very, very low risk now to the community, where really COVID is quite rampant. And that's going to exponentially increase. That 4,500, it was 3,500 a week ago. The government is not reporting these kinds of things. The government is just reporting that we're getting, 150, 200 cases a day. But actual fact, our hospitalisation has only increased slightly. We've never been over 100 people in hospital. And our numbers of people in ICU are kind of between that kind of 10 and 20 mark. Of that 4,500 people that have got COVID, only 10% of those are actually in MIQ. And then it gets less and less, so 1.5% are in hospital. We've got 64 people in hospital. And then there's kind of a mix of others and processing, which again, I really don't know what that means. So the reality is that if, the MIQ system, which is actually preventing us from bringing in visitors and business events, and likewise taking those out, and people being able to travel, and Kiwis that are fully vaccinated able to come home for Christmas, it's clearly, it's redundant system now. It's just not working. Why we're still having negative and COVID, fully tested COVID negative people in MIQ, when actually it's getting close to, they'll be more at risk actually going home than they would be they present no risk to people that are in MIQ or into the New Zealand society. You know, it's a farcical system, and so many people are calling for it to end. It's cruel. You know, there's lots and lots of people. I had a friend of mine whose dad passed away while she was in managed isolation. It's a very, very cruel system where it just doesn't need to be there.
No, I mean, and you're right. It's absurd.
Yep.
But do you think you're any closer in New Zealand to getting something sensible happening? Because it does seem to me that, you tell me if I've got this wrong, but it seems that your government is intent on trying to control every aspect of what's happening, and they're looking in completely the wrong direction, and they're not taking on board any advice or consultation or information from people who could provide something valuable to them.
Yeah, look, I think that's fair. I think there's a number of obviously factors that go into it, but you know, the realities speak for themselves. I mean, you know, New Zealand's becoming a very highly vaccinated country. You know, at the moment we are 83% fully vaccinated in New Zealand. That again, I pulled this off this morning, and Auckland is 87%. When we look at how that stacks up to other countries around the world, now our world in data, I look at that quite a bit, but that actually just looks at not eligible populations, but populations as a percentage. And Australia at the moment, as part of that, is 71% fully vaccinated. New Zealand is 69%. It's interesting because the UK is also 69%, and actually the US is 59%. So when we look at, you know, our fully vaccinated population in comparison to, you know, our trading partners, we are absolutely on par now with our trading, you know, major trading partners. But we're now moving into this traffic light system, which quite honestly is designed to reward those that are fully vaccinated and really put limitations or kind of punish those that are unvaccinated. So we're still very much going down this line of the emphasis is on getting more and more people vaccinated, which I understand, but there are definitely people that don't want to, and they will never get vaccinated as much as they are, and that is their right. You know, I think that's every human right. You've got that right, and but this new system is definitely geared towards rewarding fully vaccinated people. And when you look at the framework, it's also really, you've got kind of three layers to that, and you've got what it means for the general public, and then they single out hospitality and events. And so they are still really making it very difficult for the hospitality industry and the events industry, and by its very nature, the tourism industry as well, from actually getting back to some semblance of normal, when in actual fact, tourism and hospitality and events is one of our biggest markets in New Zealand internationally. And we keep getting heard this next quarter of next year. I mean, what does that mean?
Well, as you said earlier, you know, the difference in vaccination rates between Australia and New Zealand is 2%, 69. I mean, the overall population. Yep. So 69% for New Zealand, so they caught up really quickly. Yep. And 71% for the total population in Australia. Yet Australia's behind in terms of where the rest of the world is, but Australia is so much further ahead than New Zealand is in terms of the attitude of stepping into recovery mode and getting out of this situation so that we can get back to not the new normal, but proper normal, you know, normal. You're not even there yet. That's the bit that is
well, at the moment we're still trying to work out how to get out of Auckland, let alone get out of New Zealand, you know. So we're still fighting you know, a scenario where we can actually travel around our own country, let alone travel anywhere around the world. So, you know, we can see what's happening in Australia, we can see what's happening in these other countries. It's incredibly frustrating that we're still trying to work out how we can freely travel within New Zealand, when actually we've got a quite a highly populated population in comparison to Australia and in comparison to the UK and in comparison to the US, and we're still actually trying to find a very confusing and come up with a very confusing system around how we're going to do that. it's staggering, actually. I personally, I believe that if New Zealand was a business, we would have been bankrupt, probably 6 months ago, because, we are just losing money hand over fist. And we just don't seem to be in any better position from a clarity perspective as to where are we going to be in March next year.
At what point, Adam, do you think it gets to where without that something, as you say, some indication of what happens when you reach 90%, 95%, whatever it might be, without that roadmap, without those markers that you can use to start planning for your recovery, at what point does an industry get so small that it's not an industry anymore? It's just a few people that do stuff.
Yeah, that is a great question. Look, we can do stuff domestically, and that's kind of, we've got a lot of our clients who would have taken their events overseas have been doing those domestically. They've had no other choice. And they will be able to do those again, really from December up to about 100 people, provided that as well, everyone is fully vaccinated. So look, it is changing. It's just changing so slowly, and the rules they also change, almost on a whim. So I don't know that it will get to, look, we're just slowly starting to see positive changes. But really what New Zealand has been crying out for so long is hope. I've not seen this country this angry, probably since, I can remember the Springbok tour of 81, when we had a very divided nation and people were angry. And I feel like it's kind of a similar mood within the country at the moment. People are just angry and frustrated and fed up. And Aucklanders in particular, who, look, some of the rest of the country don't have a lot of sympathy for Aucklanders, but 100 days in lockdown, my daughter's only just gone back to school after 3 months. The impact that it's had on our kids, the impact that it's had on our economy, mental health. There are lots and lots of people that have no access to healthcare at the moment, even struggling to get to the dentist. These dentists now booked months now in advance. There's huge backlogs and actual other healthcare needs that people have. And likewise, it'll be no different to, Australia, and when you guys come out of lockdowns too, everyone's kind of going through the same thing. But yeah, it's certainly been, and we've had 5 of these lockdowns, 5 lockdowns in Auckland, which has been particularly difficult.
Or what do you think the government is likely to do next to make things better? Because ultimately things will get better, they always do, but the timing is always the issue. So
timing is an issue, and we're 4 weeks away from Christmas, and I'd like to see that this MIQ system is scrapped. It's just not working. We should have our fellow Kiwis come home for Christmas, who are fully vaccinated and negative tested. That would also just mean that from a business perspective, that we can start trading again internationally, and that we have. So the interesting thing is that we've always been able to get out of New Zealand. Like, I could jump on a plane tomorrow and go to Australia, but I can't get home. And likewise for a lot of our business events, it's the same thing. I've always said to them, well, look, we can go, but you can't get home. It's a lottery system, this MIQ ticket, to even get a space into a hotel, even just to isolate. So we can get out, we just can't come home. And because of that as well, that affects, these business events from Australia coming here as well, because they do it in reverse. They can't afford to be in MIQ for 7 days and then go back and they've freedoms. They can't do it. So, it's a real blocker to actually New Zealand getting back onto the business map and actually starting to trade again. And all for what? Because we've got so many cases of COVID now in our community. I just don't understand why they keep persisting in this very flawed system that actually did its job a year ago, but is completely failing now. And it's actually preventing us from actually growing our economy, which we are going to need given the amount of borrowing that's been going on. So it's an interesting scenario. There's a couple of things I think they need to do instantly. Look, admit that it's okay to get it wrong. Like, nobody's been through a pandemic before, and last year did very well. This year have done poorly, but you still have time to admit that, okay, we did get it wrong. Now's the time to actually get it right. So, but it's the stubbornness and the political nature of where we're at the moment, that they just don't want to do that, because they'll lose, poll ratings.
I think for a lot of people, particularly in events and business events in particular, is they understand about advocacy groups, speaking with government. But I think people in event planners, event organisers are control freaks, perhaps. They like to feel in control of their own destiny.
I'd agree with that.
Which I think is a reasonable, entirely reasonable thing. They're a particular breed of person. And I think what's been very mentally upsetting for a lot of people is that you'll have advocacy groups saying, yeah, we're doing this and we're doing what we can and leave it up to us. And it makes you feel that you are in even less control of the situation than you like to be. And I'm sure there's lots of people that will want to do what you're doing on LinkedIn, for example.
Yeah.
Have you got any advice for anybody that wants to start, putting out their case for what they feel governments are doing wrong, or perhaps how we can get out of this, how they can do that without sounding like they're crazy anti-vaxxers or alienating people looking at their posts, their LinkedIn posts?
So, for people that are, posting, for me, I mean, there's a lot of negativity online. And look, I've had moments where I've felt myself, the anger's building and the frustration's building, but I think it's just about trying to be continually pushing the same messages that actual fact, the situation, when you look at it, isn't as bad as what people are saying, particularly from an MIQ perspective. And, and when you look at the data speaks volumes. We are now in a position where I think that we, from an MIQ perspective, particularly if we got rid of that system, still had a way of managing people safely, then we can start transacting again safely. We've always transacted safely anyway, but allow some of these industries to rebound and recover, but not wait till the next quarter of next year, which could be another 3 months after December. It's staggering to me that we would do that. So I think the more that we can, social media is a great platform because it really does generate conversation. And in my mind, as long as that's kind of positive conversation, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. It's actually about the conversations that we're having. It's where it gets nasty and personal and it becomes, that attack methodology. And look, I'm one of these people that, if you have a different view to me, then that's perfectly fine. But I'm always going to have my view. I respect your view, but you should respect my view too. So, but look, I get a lot more people following me on LinkedIn and actually agreeing with what I'm saying, which is quite nice. So, yeah, just stay positive and look, just keep having a voice, because a lot of people that I know who comment don't necessarily want to be posting those things, but they completely believe in it. They know it's, they give me very positive feedback around it. They're just not in that position where they can kind of put it up there for themselves. So.
Kiwis are quite, my wife's Swedish, and in many ways I think Kiwis are similar in the respect that they're quite conservative people that I'm generalizing, of course, but if there's a cultural identity, it's fairly conservative, mind their own business, get on with what they're doing and leave everybody else alone, sort of thing. And I think that speaking out perhaps doesn't come naturally,
no.
As a collective population.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Kiwis are very laid back, in a lot of ways, and we don't protest. To even see protests of this kind of scale up and down the country is shocking. It's shocking too, but everyone really supports it because that's how everyone's feeling, and everyone's talking about it in your own, your own bubbles with family and friends. Everyone's frustrated and angry, and to even see protests in New Zealand is it's quite a rare thing, particularly the scale that we're seeing now. So that, if anything, actually should be a massive signal to this government that, like you say, Kiwis are generally conservative and quite laid back, but to see this kind of feeling, and it's been, people are protesting because they generally all feel the same way. They really should take up and take, sit up and take notice, because the Kiwis don't protest a lot, they really don't.
Okay, and so, sort of in conclusion then, what you're advocating for strongly, using social media and the data that you publish is to get rid of this MIQ system. And what does that stand for again?
So it's basically managed isolation. So look, and it's one of these things where it worked really well at the start. It was fit for purpose at the time, but it's just not now. And to persist in putting, particularly when you're fully vaccinated and you are negatively tested, back into this isolation system where I'm isolating right now at home. I'm fully vaccinated. I know I've been negatively tested. So why somebody like me who wants to come home and see their family can't actually be doing what I'm doing right now at home quite safely, and has to sit in a hotel for 7 days at significant cost, I might add, to not only the government, but also to themselves, when we've also got 4,500 people at home, exactly the same thing, who actually have COVID. Those spots would be much better used for people that are quite ill with COVID, and they could be put back into that facility where they're monitored and looked after. We've had 3 people die self-isolating at home in the last few months, which at the time was the same number of people that we'd had die of COVID in the last 12 months in its entirety. So, those facilities should be really being used for people that are quite ill and need regular care and monitored. They're all in the one space, but they're not. We're using up a lot of these rooms for people that are negative and are fully vaccinated, and they can't come home to their families. It's just staggering to me. It's beyond belief that we're doing this. And not only that, but so that's from the personal side of it, as far as people wanting to come home, but from a business side of it as well. It also means that people can't go and track business overseas, and we can't get international groups coming in that are going to spend thousands and tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars that are actually going to help lift our economy and pump money back into the communities that have really suffered during lockdowns and things like that. So yeah, so for me, I think if we were able to enable that to happen, it would have massive benefits for everybody, not only for people that are really sick and need that care, but also for Kiwis that have been trying to get home for 2 years, and also for the business community, which means that you can actually leave the country and come back in, as long as you follow the rules and you do everything right. Then we can actually start getting our gear levers going again and getting people trading and the economy starting to transact. It just makes all sense to me that that's what we should be doing. I mean, some people might have a different view, but COVID now is very clearly in our communities. It's up and down the country, and it's going to escalate even more. So what really is the point?
Right. Okay. So you've got that. Get rid of the MIQ system, and from what you're also saying is you've got to open up before March. Otherwise, there's going to be, I guess, even more carnage.
We do have people that are planning these trips to come here now. You've got international travelers. We're hearing that there's travel agents around the world that are literally taking New Zealand off their brochures because there is just, again, no certainty as to when people can come here. And, that first quarter of next year is our most important time of the year for everybody. So we need that now. We need that certainty now. I mean, just to keep talking about the first quarter is zero help to anybody. It's still just a grey time. It's not even a date. We need certainty now. We need these travellers to start saying, okay, yep, that's fine. We can still travel in March. I mean, even domestically, I still don't even know. We shifted a lot of our events in November because of lockdown into March. We still don't even know, come March, what are we going to be able to do with these? So yeah. So I personally, look, MIQ should go. It really should, and we need some certainty now around a border reopening, even if it was just Australia, and even if it is just for it will be for fully vaccinated people. Unfortunately, for those that aren't, that's kind of the classic scenario at the moment, but at least give us some kind of certainty. That's what everyone is screaming out for. What I'm saying is, there are thousands of other people saying the same thing. It's just now it's time.